over the last few years, I've really started to understand company that you create a culture, and people are spending so much of their lives in building this company alongside you. Those values are the foundations for its tribe. In the earlier days, when we were less resourced, we would make compromises and take deals from maybe investors that weren't super values aligned. But the more that we put a focus on value, trust through transparency, service, the more we started saying no. And, we walked away in our previous funding round from a $10 million check. And It's one of the scarier things that you can do. But that's been one of the most amazing things to me is what we say no to. And sometimes the people that we part ways with those are some of the harder decisions, but it's often paved our way to being much more successful.
Rebecca, welcome to Tech Scenes Unplugged.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
I've been looking forward to this conversation. Let's start from the top. Tell me about QSecure.
QSecure. So we started QSecure about 5 years ago when not many people were talking about quantum computing, and even fewer people were talking about the quantum threat to cybersecurity. And so we got started actually on the quantum side. We were building algorithms on very early quantum computers, really cool stuff. But what really led to what is now QSecure is we got an initial investment from the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, to look at not the quantum computing side itself, but the flip side, the threat of quantum computing to encrypted communications. And that in 2020 kicked off everything that is now today QSecure and what we do. So we are a company, and we've been the first mover in this space of orchestrated cryptography and this migration to infrastructure in cybersecurity that is secure against quantum computing attacks.
Okay. And for people that heard of quantum computing over and over again, but actually just really don't understand what quantum computing is, can you explain or give me an analogy of what is quantum computing?
Absolutely. So one of the most famous forefathers of quantum computing, Richard Feynman, said something along the lines of, if you think or if you claim to understand quantum mechanics, basically you're full of it, because no one understands it. It is super unintuitive. So the way that I originally gained intuition for it and love to explain it to people is a quantum computer it's not a bigger, better, faster, stronger regular computer. It thinks differently. And to get a bit of that intuition for how it thinks, if you imagine you are trying to solve a maze, and as a person, you enter into a maze and you can go right or left. You have to choose. Let's go right. You get your next T. You have to choose, go right or left. And you find your way, you iterate through, and ultimately you find your way out. Now you're a quantum computer. Quantum computer goes into a maze. You're a quantum computer, you hit your first T. You don't have to choose right and left at the same time. Once again, the next T, right and left at the same time. And so the power of the quantum computer is that you can look at all of these different pathways, all these different combinations of right, left turns, look at all of them at once, and if you're clever enough, you can figure out an algorithm to chop off the ones that are not optimal, and you're left with the most optimal path through the maze. So it's not just a better computer, and it won't solve everything for us, but there are a lot of problems that we know about where the combination of variables, traveling salesman, how do you find the quickest path through a bunch of different cities? We can't actually perform these calculations on regular computers because you start adding variables to it, and it gets too computationally complex. And some of those problems are what quantum computers are really, really good at. So it's an exciting place to be. It's an exciting time for quantum computers, and like any powerful technology, right? Quantum promises so many good things. The ability to use quantum to model systems that we can't compute on regular computers for things like chemistry, drug discovery, finding new materials, all this cool stuff. And the flip side of that is we also know that quantum computers at a certain scale, and that scale is 4,000 qubits, just about 4,000 error-corrected qubits. Quantum computers become very good at solving the math problem that protects our data as it goes over networks. As I send an email, text messages, all the way through to national security, all that stuff is protected essentially by the same math problem. And it's a math problem that turns out sufficiently powerful quantum computers are good at breaking.
So that's the challenge. So how do you fight quantum? You're fighting quantum, the potential of what quantum's going to do, but not using quantum. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's one of the biggest surprises for people, because it sounds like it's a space that sounds so sci-fi, but you don't actually need a quantum computer to fight a quantum computer. You just need math that we know and we can prove is secure against the type of logic that a quantum computer uses. And it turns out very, very smart people have figured out how to prove mathematically that these new math problems are resistant to quantum logic. And so that's what we do. We retrofit things today so that your text messages and your emails and your national security secrets are, in fact, secure from regular computing attack and a quantum computing attack. And a little asterisk is we're in the earlier days of quantum computing development, but there are billions and billions of dollars being put into advancing quantum computing research across the world. And so we will, in the coming years, and it's getting closer and closer, we'll get to a point where we have that 4,000 qubit error-corrected quantum computer, or what they call the cryptographically relevant quantum computer. But we care now, and there's all these now laws in place that are saying, hey, everybody has to adopt this new encryption because of this idea of harvest now, decrypt later, where bad actors, as we say in cybersecurity, are listening in, collecting data to stockpile it for later decryption with a sufficiently powerful quantum computer.
Yeah. So harvest now to decrypt later. Tell me a little bit more about that, or give me an example of like where that might be happening.
Totally.
I hear that a lot. I hear that phrase a lot.
You know, my brother, he'll probably kill me for using this example, but he was one of those kids that was always trying to hack into things that he probably shouldn't be hacking into. And one of the things that he would love to do is sit on unsecured Wi-Fi, like at an airport or a cafe, and intercept the communications, the transactions that people are making on that Wi-Fi. Because if your Wi-Fi is unsecured, if you're not using a password, chances are other people can see what you're doing. So, he'd capture those packets and be like, oh, look at this person's buying this on Amazon, or look at this guy's credit card number. Now, he's a good kid, so he's not going to do anything with it. But the bad actors, again, the bad actors are sort of like the generic bad guy in cyber. They have oftentimes, sometimes state-sponsored programs to intercept data as it travels over networks, because it is that easy. The public internet works in this way, right? Capture these data packets as they're traveling and then stockpile them, and they're encrypted, but they're saving them for that time when quantum computing does reach a level where it can decrypt that data while it is still valuable. So it's something to think very seriously about. I got to hear a talk from the former CTO of the CIA, and he described it as, if we're not careful and we don't think ahead, everyone is going to have their own WikiLeaks moment in the next 10 years when we get to this stage where there's a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So that's the idea of harvest now, decrypt later, and it happens all the way from the government level to independent hacker, bad actor.
Right. Is there any way to stop that now?
Yeah, totally. That's what we do. That's our bread and
So,
butter.
so tell me about that.
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all you have to do. Uh, and this is the thing that's most important to me, because the the risk in this space is that, like, business leaders and otherwise get distracted by the vocabulary of quantum or quantum safe or post quantum, and get distracted from the fact that it is simply another, most of the time, software migration. And so we fix it in that way. We go in and we work with the government, we work with banks, we work with telecommunications companies, we work with even like crypto wallets, right? And we go in and we'll deploy some basically new encryption algorithms over what they already use. They don't have to change anything. They don't have to alter any code. They don't have to, buy a quantum computer or anything like that. And a lot of people think that you do have to do that to fix this problem. But it is that simple. Deploying these new algorithms, these new encryption algorithms that encode data. If your crypto is going from one wallet to another, or over telecommunications networks, whatever it is, it's as simple as putting that new piece of software in place, and that's it. You're quantum safe. So no more harvest now, decrypt later.
So even if they were to harvest now, they won't be able to decrypt later.
Exactly. So they're harvesting that encrypted data, but it's now protected with an encryption algorithm that is not vulnerable to a quantum computer.
That's really interesting. And basically, how this, kind of going back to the company story, you were working on quantum, and was it a government contract, or it was the Air Force that came that was interested in a piece of what you were doing? Going back to
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. So we were my background is in AI, and I worked in building, training models and cool stuff, computer vision and natural language processing, and there's a point that you get to when you're a machine learning or even AI practitioner, and you kind of get frustrated with what you want to do, and all of the comes back to that, like, I want to analyze all this data in combination with all this other data and make sense of it. And you start to get frustrated with what you can do on regular computers, because the aspirations are higher than our today's computing capabilities. And so my co-founder met my co-founder in like 2019, and he was writing a book about quantum computing. So coming from the AI world, that was kind of the gateway drug. That was the point of no return, where learning about the potential of quantum computing to unlock fundamentally closed doors in not just AI but chemistry and all these things. So we started what we called a venture studio, putting investment into research that was coming out of academia and building bridges to commercialization. And so, yeah, quantum, we even did some cool stuff in 2020 around, if you remember back when contact tracing during the pandemic was a thing, we did
Right.
quantum contact tracing, so QML
Oh, wow.
tracing. But so many cool things, and that's exactly when the Air Force came to us and said, "Hey, you folks are experts in this space. This is something that we need to get ahead of. We need to fix the foundations of this." And for me, that's what I love about this is getting those protections in place allows us to benefit from all of the good that quantum computing is going to bring in the future of technology and all these good things. But getting that base layer in place that protects our data in a progressively more and more digital world, where a lot of our lives
Right.
are online these days. So that's why I love it.
So your initial contract and work with the Air Force, were you trying to build a product in tandem with what you were trying to deliver with the Air Force? Is that kind of where you guys are at? I've worked with a lot of companies that have done the same thing, where they get these government contracts and they're like, "Hey, I want to build a commercial product while I'm trying to build this at the same time." Were you guys trying to thread the needle like that as well?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we got that initial kind of seed funding from this program called SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, and it's to solve a very real challenge opportunity that the government wants to address. So we got that initial capital to look at this, and then it was kind of a rocket ship after that. So that was 2020-ish, and it just became so clear, and we got that traction so fast as we were researching and building for the Air Force. But our focus was on building that commercial product, and they're very much supportive. That's what those programs are put in place for.
Mm-hmm.
Not just building for government, but for dual use, so government
Yes.
and commercial. And so yeah, exactly. That's how it all started.
And then you guys built the product. Things kind of went quick. Like, what was it like for you to like step into this role? You're a first time founder. Is that correct?
First time, debatable.
Okay.
I'd been a founder CEO before, but seed or pre-seed stage companies.
Yeah.
In college, I got the opportunity to become a co-founder to a guy named Konstantin Guerki, incredible guy. He was one of the co-founders of LinkedIn. So that was one of my earliest experiences with being a founder.
Yeah.
So, if you think I was the CTO at another startup that I was not a founder of, small startup, but this has been a completely different experience. It's
Different level of scale, would you say?
a totally different level of scale, and yeah, seeing it all the way through from start to finish. I started out as chief product officer and VP of engineering, and co-founder, and now in the last year took over as CEO. So I've gotten to be with the company and lead really critical pieces of it from just the very beginning when we were literally a couple people in a garage to now. It's incredible.
There's so many different, I think, pivotal moments, like when you're running a company or even like through your career. Has there been like a pivotal moment in your career that kind of maybe shaped how you approach leadership?
So I started out after college in consulting, and I remember going through the training, my first job out of college, learning the corporate values and taking, watching the HR videos. And I used to think that values were these kind of performative things. But over the last few years, I've really started to understand that a company that you create is you create a culture, you create, and people are spending so much of their lives in building this company alongside you, and those values are the foundations for that culture and for who, like, its tribe.
Right.
And I really found that in the earlier days when we were less resourced, we would make compromises and take deals from maybe investors that weren't super values aligned. But the more that we put a focus on, okay, value, trust through transparency, service as a value, these things that make up the foundation of what we really truly care about, the more we started saying no. And we walked away in our previous funding round from a $10 million check from these investors that just weren't aligned. And It's one of the scarier things that you can do, but such a good decision. And there's been these decisions that we've made just based on sort of holding true to those values and that culture. And I can, that's been one of the most amazing things to me, is what we say no to. And sometimes the people that we part ways with have those are some of the harder decisions, but it's often paved our way to being much more successful, taking that kind of the integrity of what we care about very seriously.
When you have like a $10 million check in front of you, like what's going through your mind at that moment? Like what went through your mind at that decision process on that?
We're very lucky right now to be in a place where we are, we're one of the sexy companies in the VC space, in the emerging tech space. And it wasn't always that way. We were kind of the crazy ones talking about this quantum and post quantum stuff for the last 5 years. And so, there were times when you have to think about making payroll and keeping
Right.
keeping things going. And
Right.
so, yeah, when you have a $10 million check on the table in front of you, sometimes as a startup, you're in a totally good position to say no. You've got bidders coming in, but that reality is less frequent than, well, hey, if I say no to this, I'm taking a risk. And my job is to make sure that my people get paid, and that we achieve all the beautiful goals that we aim to. So yeah, I mean, what was going through my head is this a company ending decision if I say no?
That's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a handful of companies. I've had a handful of moments myself where there's something I always feel like all of us could have done so many different things. And if you look back and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? It kind of feels like a calling to me. I kind of feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's a lot of times in my life that it almost didn't feel like it was my decision. It was just like something, there was some sort of signal I was capturing that said, you need to do this. Like you need to
Mm-hmm.
create an operating system for growth companies and companies doing things that have never been done before. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I just felt like there was like some sort of signal that I captured and I was like, guess I'm doing this. Like, it was just like, it's more of a calling, I think. And I think a lot of founders feel that. And there's moments, and I've had these moments too, where it's scary to make a decision to go a different direction than like that safe direction,
Totally.
which feels safe. But again, I think it's like another signal, or there's something that kind of calls out that tells you like, don't do it,
That was right. Yeah.
don't do it. Yeah. And try to like kind of escape the fear of the moment to make the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for founders, that's a muscle. That muscle is like some sort of resilience muscle that we build over and over again by, maybe it's those small no's at first and it becomes bigger no's. But I think it's something that builds over time.
I totally feel that. I've it's the more I've gotten that positive reinforcement of listening to that, whatever it is, that gut feeling of this is not the traditional route, but you should go this way. The more positive reinforcement that's come from making those kind of scary decisions, the more it's like, oh yeah, I've seen this before.
Now that company's scaled quite a bit since 2020, how have you been able to grow, like keep kind of those values and those behaviors and that culture together? Because every time you add a new person, you kind of like throwing another ingredient into the mix of
Yeah.
what you're making, right? And like, how have you guys done that? Has there been any sort of methods, methodologies, tools?
It's been, I've heard people say this: every time you double in size, everything breaks. So everything that you put in place that was working then breaks. Um, and I think it's true. I kind of love that about startups. The moment I get comfortable is the moment that new skills need to be learned. Everything changes. The we tried out a lot of things, but it's much more. I would say it takes really active care and feeding, much more than I would have anticipated. We have things like we have a Slack channel called Values Kudos, where everybody in the team calls out, hey, this person really upheld trust through transparency by doing this XYZ. Kudos to, you know, Craig.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And that's been a really fun one. I really like that one because it keeps the values at the top of people's minds, and people love calling people out and people love getting called out. And it's good, it's good to recognize the team for the wins within that context of here's how we're doing it. Here's how we're, upholding those.
Yeah, I think positivity in the workplace is such a low hanging fruit. And there's like such easy little things that we can do. Like you said, people spend so much time in our organization and put so much energy into it to really try to make it successful. And I do believe not everybody's always in the right role at the right time. People only have limited energy, so I think it's so important to like be really clear about what people's roles and responsibilities are, and then define a plan and let them just run. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think at the end of the day, I think everybody really wants to be successful. And I think as a CEO, it's just about trying to organize it in the right way to allow everybody just to be able to be the best at what they're doing.
100%. This is where you're a genius at, but learning the art of setting those OKRs, the objectives, to the right altitude that just let people run and achieve and think of these creative solutions to rising to those challenges. It's kind of a really fun experience. And like you said, there are a lot of people at the company whose roles have evolved over these last 5 years because everything has changed. And
Right.
yeah. And I've also seen people have a genius in one thing early on and then develop a totally new genius as the company evolves.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely one of my behaviors I wrote about in the book. And I've been doing this in this space for about 30 years. And one of the behaviors over and over again is learning. Like I've really identified that like in hiring and teams I work with, like if you're not willing to learn, that means you're not willing to change. And in the environment we're in, things are changing faster and faster every single day. And so like that behavior has to be important. I mean, it's when people are like, oh, it's kind of hard to suss out on someone. And I think, well, ask them questions like, what are you learning about right now? What do you like to learn about? How do you learn? If you can identify those things like in candidates, like that's really important. And I think the speed of business is only getting faster. And so that just means the faster we go, the more change we're going to have. So the hungrier people are to learn, that's going to become more and more important. Because everybody, especially with AI right now, everybody's job's changing. Everybody's.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong, but I think everybody should be using AI right now. And if they're not, they're going to be a little behind.
Yes. I heard AI is only going to replace the jobs of people who don't start using AI.
Right.
I wanted to call out somebody who really embodies this in our company. She started out as a UX, user experience designer, and she just taught herself everything and figured out how to use tools and automation. And she became later our head of product, which in product management was a lot of new skills for her. And she just crushed it, taught herself everything, wasn't scared of the hard work. And now she is our acting COO and injecting that kind of like self-learning and excitement to use tools into the business as a whole. So that's Meg. She's pretty awesome.
That is awesome. I think it takes a certain type of person that can do that within a company. They start in one position and they just kind of work into it. I found that like they used to say like flat and deep or something like that. Like when you're starting a company, you want all these people that are like long or flat where they can do a lot of different things. And then as a company gets really big, then you want like specialists that can go deep into like subject matter expertise. But I think there's this kind of magic place from like where you're at very early days to like growing, where certain people can like really excel and learn things, and they see the gaps in the organization and they can go in there and just fill the gaps. They're just kind of always willing to raise their hand and be like, I can try to figure that out. Those people grow really fast. They grow really fast. But like anything growing, like kind of like what you said earlier too, I think is so important is like it takes nurturing it, right? It takes a lot of feeding it, feeding the organization. And as a CEO, I think that's probably one of the most important responsibilities. Like what does the company need right now? Right? Like what does it need right now to get to where we want to go? And like you said, it changes quickly.
It does. We do right now. We're doing our objective setting quarterly, and we're in such a cool space, and we have been for the last 5 years. And again, we went from being the people who were talking about this when nobody else was to now this is a very hot topic, and there's regulation coming out and these things, and the dynamics are changing from month to month, and 100%. But I've definitely learned the value of not just external thought leadership out to the market, but internal to the company itself, over communicating like, hey, I'm seeing this is providing those signals internally and that care and feeding. And yeah,
Right.
oftentimes communicating more than I think, but that's been a big learning as well.
Yeah, I think creating visibility not only like into the organization, but it's like I think one of the things I see within teams when they really start to embrace and get together and you kind of have that communication cadence is like sales understands what product's doing, product understands what marketing is doing, marketing understands what finance is doing, and once you can create clarity around all that, these teams can just work really well together. I think in any teams that are doing something new, it's typically highly cross-functional. They need each
Mm-hmm.
other, and that's why I like to
Mm-hmm.
really suss out like goals within each one of those teams. Every team should have like focus and goals, but then we should be able to share them amongst each other so we can kind of make those connections, kind of synapses, like a brain
Yeah.
would, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes engineering and product to make a product. It takes marketing to market it, sales to sell it, customer success. It takes that whole thing, and that's the engine. It's like, how do we build this engine? And it takes every one of those pieces. And I think a lot of times people do a plan and they just throw some of the stuff up there, but it's not clear within each one of those areas. And I think you get those areas clear at different stages and different timelines. That's when teams can kind of like go, okay, now I know what I need to do. Let's just go. And we
Mm-hmm.
can run. Going back to quantum, I do have some questions on quantum. Like the state of quantum right now, I mean, the computers are a bit unstable, right? Is that kind of part quantum computers? They're a little unstable, really, to do the things that we want them to do. What's it look like right now, and what do you think quantum is going to look like in the next 5 years?
It's a quantum time. It's our time. We Yes, the answer is yes. For example, when we talk about qubits, I'm on a laptop that has, let's say, 16 gig of RAM. That's its processing power. In a quantum computing world, the qubits are that RAM, and so that's how they measure performance. But it's when you hear, for example, that IBM came out with a quantum computer that has 1,000 qubits, or Atom Computing came out with a computer that has 1,000 qubits. PsiQuantum, another quantum computing company, has sort of teased that they'll have 1,000,000 qubits by 2028, 2029. Those qubits are a little different from the 4,000 error corrected qubits that you need to break encryption, break today's encryption. And that is exactly, to your point, they're a little finicky right now. And so you need redundancy. You need to engineer in more stability because oftentimes you're actually you're using tools to control like particle-sized things, and those are the qubits. And so yes, so 1,000 qubits isn't it? They call them 1,000 physical qubits is not the same as 1,000 logical or error-corrected qubits. And so that's where some of the fun is right now, is figuring out how to make those more stable. And so you need anywhere from 10 to 1,000 physical qubits, non-error corrected qubits, to make up one logical or error corrected qubit. So, but to the second question, where are we going to be in the next 5 years? If I were living a different life right now and I were starting a venture capital fund, I would be starting a venture capital fund in quantum technologies and quantum adjacent technologies. And I would say the next 5 to 10 years are going to be incredibly exciting. We're going to start to see these instances of quantum computers being used to solve problems that we will never be able to on regular computers. And that's because that RAM. So I have a 16 gig of RAM computer that I'm talking to you on. To double the processing power, I need another 16 gig of RAM. You know, two things on the scale of this computer. To double the processing power of a quantum computer, I need to add 1 qubit. So every time I add 1 qubit, I multiply the RAM by 2. And so if I have a 50 qubit quantum computer, a 51 qubit quantum computer is twice as powerful. So once you start to get a few of these logical or error corrected qubits in a machine, you start to be able pretty quickly at a handful of qubits, you start to be able to solve some really, really cool problems that we could never do on regular computers. in chemistry and modeling. There's some AI applications and so on and so forth. So next 5 years, we're going to start seeing, I'd say next 2 years, those instances of XYZ company, Boeing solved this chemistry problem with a quantum computer, or USPS figured out how to, or whatever self-driving car company figured out route optimization with quantum computers. Right. So yeah, it's a very, very exciting.
How accessible do you think these computers will be? Like, will people be renting time on them, or will people have them? Because they're very complex.
I would love to have a personal quantum computer someday, but they are, currently in the millions of dollars. One of the things that I love about quantum computers is you can go on and you can access a cloud-based quantum computer right now. And so they're in some ways kind of democratized. We can already access the early ones. And I imagine for the next 10 years, that will be the model. We'll access them like we do AWS or cloud-based services.
Right.
And as the technology gets more and more mature, then we'll probably see them be more commoditized. But that's, again, one of my favorite things is anyone across the globe could go on and learn how to program one of today's quantum computers. The flip side, from the cybersecurity perspective, is because this is a very, very powerful tool, especially as you scale it, there's a lot of investment at the government level across the world in building quantum computers and research and development of quantum computers to use strategically as tools. And we may not always have access to those kinds of machines or even know that those machines are online. So I like to remind people, when we think about the cybersecurity, there's probably not going to be a press release when the cryptographically relevant 4,000 qubit quantum computer exists. That will happen without the big news story. Because if you achieved that scale, it's a very strategic and powerful tool that you probably don't want to show your cards. So it's very important to prepare for the quantum security side well in advance of that news story.
And that's exactly where I was going to go with, in the next 5 years with this advancement. Where do you see QSecure going and the path that the company's going to take?
Well, the great thing about cybersecurity is that it exists. I use a lot of online services that benefit from encryption and cybersecurity to protect my data. The bad news is cybersecurity was an afterthought, right? The internet and communications were developed, and then cybersecurity was developed. So some of the hardest working people in business are the people who are in charge of cybersecurity. And so they have a lot on their plates. They're fixing a lot and getting to this place where they can adopt post-quantum or quantum-safe encryption like what we do. We have a lot of demand from these early adopters today, but that demand is going to continue well into the coming years as the middle adopters and then, unfortunately, the late adopters, who a lot of them it'll be too late, but we'll be serving those customers for several years to come. The great thing, and again, why I love this, the migration to quantum safe infrastructures, it's not really the end goal. It is a stepping stone to fix the foundations of how we manage secure communications. And so the painkiller right now for us is that we allow organizations, government to adopt these quantum safe algorithms, these new mandates, but the vitamin and the future is within that we change the way that encryption is managed. And so that whenever in the future, as AI advances, as quantum computing advances, there's going to be more dynamic threats to secure communications. And what we really do at the end of the day is allow organizations to push a button and adapt and deploy new protections rather than taking like years, which is the current state of things. It takes years to carry out these encryption migrations now. So that's kind of the future. This migration to quantum safe is a catalyst for a more agile and an adaptive future of secure communications.
Well, that sounds like a good future. That sounds like a good future. All right. Well, I've hit you with a lot of questions. So I have one last question for you. But before that, since I asked so many questions, I'm going to let you ask a question of me. Do you have any question? What would you like to ask me?
Ooh, okay. So you work with a lot of teams, a lot of companies, and you help them set objectives and grow. What is the biggest mistake that you see organizations making?
Oh, okay. There's a lot of them. I think the biggest one, and it's no fault to them at all, but all the teams I work with tend to be working at the very cutting edge of technology. They're doing things. They're going really fast and breaking things, and I think one of the biggest flaws that happens, and again, it's not their fault, is that they're going so fast that they feel like they can't sometimes just stop and collect themselves. And so, they feel like chaos is okay. They call it an organization for a reason, because you should be organized, right? And I think that's why they call it an organization. But teams that are going so fast, the biggest thing that can benefit them to actually go faster is every once in a while, stop what they're doing and get together. So like having the leadership team get together mid-year, every quarter, annually, and have a really good agenda for like collecting their thoughts about what's working, what's not working, having really important conversations that are probably a little bit higher level strategic, unpacking all their thoughts, listening to each other, like truly listening to each other and being present, and then packing all that back up and getting really focused on like what's most important, right? There's a phrase that slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I think teams that really want to go fast and be successful have to just stop every once in a while and collect themselves. And I see it any sports team, right? There's, basketball has quarters or halftime, hockey has periods, and then they call timeouts too, right? Like in the middle of the game, they'll call a timeout and just pause and collect themselves before they go back out there and perform. And I think there's a lot of teams that, early days that I worked with, and again, I work with teams that are probably about 20 to 500 employees. This just never took a break. It never like just really stopped. And you can see it in the teams, because even when you have the team just stop and be still, they want to get on their phones. They want to get on their email. They want to get on the Slack channel. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see that can make the biggest difference if they really do want to go faster is like just stop and pause.
Yeah, it's so funny. So saying no to that $10 million check, right? That that opened us up to signing on with our lead investor from our last round, and they are so incredible. Shout out to Two Bear Capital. They're the Sequoia of Venture 3.0. We had the 2000 bubble era venture. We had while I was in school. Silicon Valley was get a technology moat, get your head start, and now we're in Venture 3.0, where it's a lot about people, and it's a lot about but that is a mantra. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That the partner at Two Bear Capital always repeats, and it's incredible to have that kind of partnership in them, because for example, the VC that we turned down, they had terms in the term sheet. Sorry, inside baseball in venture, but they had terms that kind of like penalized us for every year that we did not have an exit. Whereas our investors now, they're so much about, hey, we're in it for the long game. Let's take that pause. Let's look at our surroundings. Let's do this together, and yeah, go slow to go fast.
Yeah. Be intentional. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much. So my last question, it's more than a question. This is actually kind of a scenario. And I like to tell people this is the most important question I've ever asked. So I'm glad you're sitting down. So here's the scenario. It's a fun one. You're trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. You're on this desert island. You have plenty of food. You have water. You have healthcare. You have everything that you possibly need. And it's a beautiful desert island. The one thing that you don't have, though, is there's no entertainment on the island. None. But luckily for you, an old 80s boombox drifts ashore with unlimited batteries. But you can only bring one album to listen to the rest of your life. It could be of any era. I know I said 80s boombox. People think 80s then. But any era, any genre, but you can only bring one album the rest of your life. What album are you going to bring?
Oh, dang. Album. That's such a good question. I'm a big sing in the shower person. And if I was on a desert island, no one would have to hear me sing. So I think it has to be a sing-along album. And I don't know if this will stand up forever, but Hozier's first album.
Oh, with Take Me to Church on it?
Yeah.
Is that on that album?
That's the one, yeah.
I thought that was a bit genre breaking when he came out with that album.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Every one of those songs was great, and yeah, it combines. You look at some of his old videos, and when he's like in school, and it's so folky and like that rock fusion, and yeah, totally. Well, okay, what's yours?
Oh, what's mine? I change mine all the time. Now you have me thinking down that I change mine all the time. I'd probably just go with Bob Marley right now, one of Bob Marley's greatest hits or something like that. Very desert islandy feel.
Yeah, it's a good tropical desert island.
I don't think it would be like Iron Maiden or anything like that for tropical island.
Yeah. Actually, the right answer is probably compilation. A lot of different.
Oh yeah, that is probably. You're right. Yeah. You're right.
Mixtape.
You're hacking the system again. You're hacking.
Yeah. There you
Quantum thought. Go every direction.
Every direction.
All right, Rebecca, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jeff.